My name is Julien, and one of the things I love to do is playing around with IoT and side projects. This is an example of a fully automated plant growing system that I built a couple years back, and this is kind of how it was built. Yeah, one of the reason I'm speaking today is really a year ago I bought a house, and then all of a sudden I started thinking about all those things that I could put in my house and automate. So the lights, the thermostat. One of those things was actually, hey, I can do all of that with my voice. And how do I actually do that? That's what we're going to look into a bit today. So this talk is going to be about two main things. We're going to be talking about Google Home on one hand, or voice assistants to be a bit more generic. And the second thing we're going to talk about is banking APIs, and especially open banking APIs. And we're going to try to see if we can fuse them both. I'm going to start with banking APIs, really. We're going to really browse through it quickly, but there's something big that happened this year in Europe, and that's called PSD2. And, well, that's basically what PSD2 is, but I'm going to sum it up for you. Basically, every single bank in Europe, starting in September, has to offer open APIs. It is a mandatory thing. It is a law. And there's several reasons for that. The first one is, well, because the banks have no open APIs, the ecosystem is pretty closed at this moment. So this is a desire to increase competition and make it easier for startups and small companies to get into the banking market. And it's also a way to harmonize protection rights, right? If everybody is at the same level and everybody has to offer APIs, it's easy to put everybody on the same ground. Well, there's three big APIs that everybody has to offer. The first one is the account information API, and that's basically just access to your transactions. Well, that's useful if you're, like me, having several banks and you want to have a unified bookkeeping, for example. But it can also be useful for loans. So if you want a loan, then, well, you can give access to the loan provider that will look quickly that you have nothing. Today it's manual, so it will be done anyways. You need several days. Well, tomorrow you need, or as of last month, you need only a few seconds. The second one is available funds confirmation. So, sorry. Well, you want to do a purchase, then a company would be it would be possible for the company to check if you have enough money to do that. And the last one is, in my opinion, a bit more interesting, and it's basically a payment initiation service. And you can see it as PayPal. Or in the Netherlands, we have a system that allows to do that very quickly already, called Ideal, but it's not there everywhere. It's not there in France, for example. So this is allowing big companies like IKEA, for example, to really quickly say, okay, can you give me that amount of money? And then you can just do it via the website. Okay, well, that was it for bank APIs. You know enough for the demo. Now, we're going to do some generics about voice assistants. I'm going to stay very basic, but my point today is really to show you that quickly, and you can do really quickly, really easy things and have fun with it at your house, basically. Some of the words I'm going to use, you need. The first one is an app. Well, an app is the container of everything that you're going to build. So, Domino Pizza's app would allow you to order pizzas, but maybe also, for example, see your previous orders. An intent is what a user wants to do. It is not actually what he says. Well, one of the important things is voice assistance is, well, when a user is saying something, it might actually be something different. He can say it in a different way. He can say it in a polite version, very short. The intent is what the root of the meaning is. And the context is sometimes voice assistance, you need several steps. So you need to keep context. If you want to order coffee, for example, then the app might want to ask you what the size you want. Do you want milk in it, etc. You need to keep context. And the last one is the most interesting one is the fulfillment. It's actually, once the user has made his request, what's happening. Okay. One last thing I'm going to go through. Entities. Entities are crucial for voice assistants. Those are the roots of the meaning. If you want a coffee, what I really want to know is, okay, do you want coffee or tea? What size do you want? Maybe what options do you want? And when do you want it ordered? All of these are entities. Based on this list of entities, you should be able to proceed and make your order. And yeah, there's most basic ones, size, type, amount, location, etc. But you can also make your own. And the second thing it can be useful for is if you want to personalize the action for the user. So we're talking about my mom here. Well, maybe the app is able, in the long run, to know what the name of my mom is and make the connection. OK? Well, actually, we're going to do pretty much 20 minutes of demo. I'm going to build a small bot with you live. Our goal is going to be, we're going to have two goals. The first one's we're going to look at what was my last transaction, and I'm going to try to do that using a voice agent. And the second one is, well, we're going to try to make a transaction, because that's the title of the talk. And just so that you understand, we're going to go through the code a little bit later. But the way we're going to do it today is, well, we're going to simulate a Google Home for a while and use basically a UI called Dialogflow that will help me create the voice assistant app. In the backend, I have an agent. It's a very small Spring application, just a REST API pretty much. And in the backend, we're going to simulate a bank using a project called Open Bank Project, which allows you to use sandboxes and deploy your own bank if you want as a service. Keep in mind that we're going to use Google Home today, but actually, Dialogflow is pretty generic. So you could use Alexa, but you could also use a web app. You could use Telegram or Slack, for example, as an activation device. Yep, that's one too much. OK, let's see. We're going to... Hello? OK. Let's do it like that. All right. So this is Dialogflow. This is pretty much an IDE for voice assistant apps. You can also do everything via code. That's probably the way you want it. You want to do it if you're really in that business. But today we're going to use the UI because it's much simpler and better. Well, we're going to start with intents. And we can test on the right. So the first thing I can do is when we create a new voice assistant app, the first thing that Google allows us to do is fallback and welcome. And those are very important because one of the main things that people want to say is hi, one way or another. I don't know if you have Google Assistants at home, but I always say hi. And the first thing we can see is that we actually are able to map this text from the user to an actual intent. That's very important, because based on the intent, we can actually change the fulfillment. And the second thing that is given for free is, well, if I don't understand anything of what you're saying, then we have a fallback intent that asks you to say it again. So we're going to go on and create a first entity, and we're going to try to fetch the last transaction from a user. So I'm going to create a new, I'm creating an entity, sorry. I want to create an intent. We're going to go through entities first, soon. OK. So I'm going to give it a name. And typing in front of people is hard. OK, and the first thing I want to do is training phrases. So how is my Dialogflow or my Google Voice Assistant going to be able to recognize that I'm actually talking what I want? And we're going to say, OK, what was my last transaction? And I can also do last transaction in a very short manner. I can also do very polite way, long, short, etc. If you want to deploy something to production, you probably want a large array, because there's nothing more frustrated than the Dialogflow not understanding you. OK. And now we're saved. We're going to wait for the agent to train. One of the huge things that is really nice, that we don't have to do because we're using Dialogflow, is Google is actually doing all the natural language understanding for us. So it's going to be able itself to extract all the meaning of what we're saying. So I'm going to try and go and say, OK, what was my last transaction? Oops, sorry for that. OK, last transaction. OK, well, we have no response because we didn't set any. But we see that the intent has been picked up. So we see already that basically we're going in the right place in the flow that we want. Well, the next thing we want to do is basically allow the fulfillment. So we can do it in several ways. There's many ways to do it, actually. You can do responses via text here, but you can also enable a webhook, which is what we're going to do. And it's basically going to make an API request to a backend. I already have my webhook set up. I could also use Firebase functions, but it's a Java conference. So we're going to go into a Spring Boot app instead. And I'm going to ask again. OK, and well, holy moly, thank you. So we are able to pick up our last transactions. It was I sent money to mom, and it was yesterday, or was that today? Yesterday, for €1. Sounds a bit like magic, but basically what we have done, and I can show you quickly, we've basically done an API request, JSON payload, with an intent. So the actual query text that the user has done, the confidence, so the Google algorithm was sure that I was asking for that, and the actual intent. And I'm just answering via JSON as well. OK, that's very underwhelming. Now we're going to try to create another intent. We're going to try to send money to someone. So we're going to create a new intent. And I'm going to show you something. One of the things that's awesome is really the NLU, because Google will understand a lot of stuff for you. So for example, if you say, I want to send €20, is Google going to help me there? OK. I want to send €20. Yes. All right. That's what the entities I was talking about. Out of a sentence, Google is able to understand that I'm having a unique currency here. And that's awesome, because through the API request, we can just extract that. It's much easier than having to understand the whole user. We're going to want a second thing here. We're going to want also an actual person. We want to send money to someone. So we're going to go and create an intent. We're going to create our own entity. I could do that myself. So I could say, OK, I know Bob in my family. So I'm going to create Bob, and I'm going to create George, etc. That's not very efficient, and that's never what someone's going to do. So instead, I'm going to use IntelliJ, Dialogflow as an API. And well, this is very small amount of code, but I'm basically creating entities using a text file. And each line is going to be one of the things that Google has to understand. And as you can see, we can create what is called composite entities. And what that means is, well, we're creating entities based on other entities. That's pretty nice, actually. So I'm going to go and run the code. Wait a second. Can you see everything on the screen, or? Yeah? OK. All right, we're done. So if I come back to my entities, then I see now that I have a contact that's been defined, a contact entity, and I recognize those entities as well. So now we're going to go back to our send money entity, and we're going to play around with the contacts now. So I'm going to delete this one, and I'm going to say I want to send $20 to mom. Oops, sorry for that. There you go. And now we see, indeed, that this has been recognized as a contact. That's pretty useful for us. And then, as usual, we need to say it in several manners so that Google is able to understand what the user is going to say. So please send €10 to my dad. There you go. And we're going to do a last one. And you know, what's interesting in Google App is you have to figure out how the user is going to say stuff. And I say it like that, but maybe someone's going to say, geez, whoop, create a payment transaction of let me try rubles, to Uncle George. All right. So that way, now when we save, and we don't forget to enable fulfillment, that's the last thing we want to do. We have to wait always. If you ever play with it, always wait for the agent to be, you see that the agent has to start, so you have some machine learning going on in the background. And then we can ask stuff. So please send €10 to mom. OK, so my backend has answered in a positive manner, which is nice. And if I ask for my last transaction again, then we see that our balance has decreased. So things actually are happening in the back end. OK. Well, that's nice. That's a start. Now, let me think. Yes, one of the things that is a little bit interesting is, OK, what if I say send money to mom? Well, we actually recognize the intent, but now we can't actually fulfill the request because we're missing information here. My backend expects an amount of currency as well. Well, this is one thing that we can also do in the Google Dialogflow UI. We can actually say that those fields are required. And we can define prompts. And in this case here, it's like how much money you want to send. And as usual, I will have to do more, but you're going to get bored. So please do it better at home. And like here, you would say, who do you want to send money to? By the way, this is not about the user understanding me. I need to write several things so that there is some variety in my algorithm. Otherwise, it's very mechanical, and he's always going to ask me about the same thing. So if I want to make my assistant a little more human-like, I have to create several sentences. OK. So now if I try again and select, OK, please send money, send 10 euros, then the intent's recognized. It is not what I'm expecting. I forgot to save. It's funny because people told me, is this your first talk? Please do not do a live demo. OK, let's try again. Please send 10 euros. All right. Interesting things. I talked about it a bit earlier. We do have a context now. So what that means is Dialogflow is able to recognize, OK, I have an intent. The user wants to send money, but there's not enough info. So I'm going to create a context. I'm going to ask for a follow-up question so that the information that is missing comes up. And then I will be able to fulfill everything. So I actually get my default response. Who do you want to send money to? Well, I'm going to say my mom. My mom is going to get a lot of money today. Oh, there's no bank account for my mom. OK, let's try last time. Mom. Yes. OK, you could do that manually. You could create your own intent. So we could go back to intents, create an intent, create a follow-up intent, etc. What I'm trying to show you here is the goodies that Dialogflow allows you to play with so that you can really quickly, and in 10 minutes, actually create your own thing. Well, the next step is, it's nice, we've created money, we're sending money, but now my daughter comes up and then she just asks for money and then Google is sending money. So I'm going to add follow-up intent. I want Google to ask me, are you really sure you want to send money? I could do it manually again, but Dialogflow also allows for fun stuff. It has custom follow-up intents that you can already that are already set up for you. So I'm going to do a yes follow-up intent. Wait for it to be ready. And we're going to do a no follow-up intent as well. And we're going to have to change our intents a little bit, because remember, I set up the fulfillment for the first intent. So if I ask for sending money now, actually, it's already going to send money. So I have to disable the webhook in this case. And here, I'm going to have to tell the user, somehow, are you sure? So we're going to do it like this. We're going to say, are you sure? And we're going to use the entities that we created earlier to give a bit more of a custom experience. So do you want to send? And then we're going to use here the unit currency. Oh, boy. I don't know why. Normally, unit currency to, and then contact. OK. We're going to save that one. And I'm going to go to the other intents. And I'm going to, for the no, oops, sorry for that. For the no intent, I'm basically going to say no, thank you. And as I said, you can see that Google is providing us with a lot of training phrases to understand the no. And then, OK. Canceling. And the last one we need is the yes, and we're going to re-enable our intent. No, fulfillment, sorry. Okay. Fulfillment. Enable webhook and save. Okay, waiting for the agent. There you go. Okay, and then I'm going to say, please send 10 euros to mom. I know I'm using always the same examples, but I want to minimize the amount of typing I'm doing. It's more for you than for me. Okay, and now we see that we actually get a confirmation request. Again, we have this context with a follow-up. And then if we say yes, then we're going to go through. There you go. And I'm not actually cheating you. If we look at the balance, it is going down. Okay, that's enough for Dialogflow. I'm going to really quickly browse through the actual application that we have in the background, but you're going to be very underwhelmed. There is a everybody uses Spring Boot, I guess, or knows at least about Spring Boot. You should. It's Java conference. So I have a fulfillment endpoint, and depending, I am parsing the JSON request that is coming in, and depending on the content of the intent, then I'm going to create a different action. I probably wouldn't do it like this in production, but you know. My service actually calls an open bank client, makes a payment request, and what it really is in the background is just a post request with authentication, of course. The last thing, and this is where I'm cheating. You can wonder, you know, but how does he know that my mom? How does it connect that to a bank account? Well, I just have a hash map. So mom is going to be connected to a bank account in the background. But that's one of the things that is interesting if we couple back to PSD2. That's one of the things that, for example, a startup could create value, you know, knowing who your mom is and how to connect to bank accounts, or how to go in your Google contacts, for example, and parse that stuff. Right now, it's not there. What did I want to show you again? There's one more thing. Yes, one more thing. We talked about integrations. Oh, I didn't talk about integrations yet. But when you create a Dialogflow app, you can do a lot of things. You can actually create a web demo very easily. You can create Slack. You can also use Telegram. Seems to be used a lot here. But all of that comes for free, pretty much. So if I want to do a web demo and I want to embed that in my website, you know, the very annoying pop-up that comes at the bottom right of your screen, well, I can actually, I can actually use it directly. And one last thing, I talked about NLU a little bit, about the fact that Google is able to understand you, or is also able to understand when you have a broken English, or if you do typos, most of the time, which is pretty nice. That's fuzzy matching in the background. And we're going to do Slack as well, just for the fun of it. I didn't start up Slack this morning, so I hope there's not weird stuff on my screen. Okay. Yeah. I can't believe that everything works. Okay. What is going to crash? There's going to be something. Okay. I'm going to go back to my slides. Sorry, I closed them. Okay. That was a very quick horizon tour of what you can do. My point is not to show you how to do it in production. You probably want to have data scientists in the background that do very complex fulfillment. My point was more, if you want to play at home, then you can. I was planning on actually using my voice to do it. The only problem is the Wi-Fi here is secured behind an SMS, and I couldn't, I can't log in with the Google Home, so I can't show you actually live. Okay, some thoughts. First, PSD2. I don't know how much that touches you because you're just outside of Europe, but in the EU, that's pretty big right now, PSD2. And depending who you are, it really is scary or a huge opportunity. Think about very large banks, for example. Well, the question is, okay, I have all my customer data. That's what the value is. Now I have to open it to everybody. So innovation is kind of a requirement in the coming future. Banks cannot just stay, big hogs of data and keep you locked in because you are mandatory. It's mandatory by law to open up. I'm very interested to see what's going to come up in the coming years. And as a French guy living in the Netherlands, I have a French bank account, I have 2 Dutch bank accounts, and keeping everything in sync is horrible. So I'm really looking forward to some improvements there. Now, voice assistants. This is Google, remember? So the first thing is, who's listening? Even some Google executives say, well, if you have guests at home and you have a Google Home, maybe you actually should tell them that they might be listened to. Even Google's saying that. I find that pretty scary. And if you look at the news, last week they acquired Fitbit. The first thing they did is swallow up all the data. 2 days ago they announced that they're opening a bank. So if you're sick, maybe it's not a good idea to open something at Google. I don't know. And the last one, the second interesting thing is security. Voice assistants. Well, Google does voice recognition. Google recognizes your voice among other people. How safe is that? That's the first question. Second question is, well, your voice is just frequencies, right? So if you put researchers in a room, they come up with a device that actually mimics your voice without even sounding like your voice, even better, without making any noise from outside your home. So it's been proved, there's a proof of concept already where people outside garage doors are actually using a device that does not make any sound for us to trigger Google Homes to open garage doors. And that's called dolphin attacks. How cool is that? Okay, would you like to know more? Some code, slides, the project, OpenBank, Dialogflow. Look into it if you have a house and some lights at home, for example. It's really fun. And thank you.